Hey, what's up? So I'm going to show you what 100 hours of piano practice looks like versus 1,000 hours of piano practice from my own piano journey. Now, a few quick disclaimers before we get into this. This is based off my own piano journey, but I didn't actually track the amount of time I spent practicing and playing the piano in my early teenage years. And so I'm kind of just guessing based off my memory. So I could be way off with this, but I tried my best to be as accurate as possible. Okay, so just bear that in mind. And the other disclaimer is that I started the piano at age 12, but I started learning the drums at age 8. And so I was coming into the piano with this pre-established sense of musicality and rhythm and flow. And my ear was already somewhat developed, and I already had a passion and love for music coming into the piano. And so that's another thing that I think you need to know about, just for some context as to where I was coming from. Okay, so this first video is something I found in the archives. I managed to dig this up. This is from my second year of learning the piano, and it's a recording of the Up theme song, right? Now, I learned this song and I mastered it and I rehearsed it over and over again for my first piano competition, and I actually won this piano competition with this piece. And it's because A, I loved this piece of music, and B, I rehearsed it over and over again. And so this is a recording from that. So let's have a listen to this. This is 100 hours of piano practice. Okay, let's have a listen. Yeah, so that's roughly about where I was at after 100 hours of piano practice. Now, I'm doing this kind of air quotation thing because I didn't really practice the piano. This is more 100 hours of me sitting at the piano. That's a more accurate description of this, because the only practice I did was at my piano lessons every week, where my teacher kind of made me do like scales and finger exercises. But outside of my lessons, I did not practice the piano. All I did was I learned my favorite songs, and I kind of, I messed around on them, and it was the odd piece that I really fully learned and mastered. And so, yeah, I didn't really practice the piano. I wasn't hugely invested in it until this piece of music here. Okay, so this was the first piece that I really learned and I really mastered. And so this is my first piece of advice for you if you're a beginner pianist, is to choose one piece of music and really learn it all the way through and practice it over and over again until you've mastered that piece. And you can sound like this after 100 hours. I can promise you that. Now, I led with my love for the music first. Okay, I loved this piece of music, and that's what motivated me to actually sit at the piano and practice and rehearse this piece, right? And so, yeah, this is about where you can be at after 100 hours of piano practice, right? But in fact, I think you can probably do better than this, do better than where I was, if you actually also practice what I call the basics, right? If you spend a little bit of time practicing finger exercises and scales and arpeggio patterns and things like this, the skills that I teach here on this channel, here on Unlock the Keyboard, then I think you can reach this level and maybe a little bit further, right? You'll start to develop that freedom on the piano. You will have achieved hand independence, right? That's one of the first big challenges that we encounter on the piano. You'll be able to play both hands together. You will be able to coordinate yourself on the piano. And so this is a good estimation of where you could be at after 100 hours of piano practice. Okay, let's progress to 500 hours of piano practice. Okay, so that Up theme tune, that was me at about age 13, and this is a recording from me when I was around about 16 years old. Okay, so this is like 3 years later, and I would put this at 500 hours of piano practice. Now again, air quotation marks, because I didn't really practice. I didn't like practicing. My piano teacher told me to practice finger exercises and scales, but I never did them. I only did them when I showed up to his lesson, and even then I did them very badly, right? And so this was me after 500 hours of sitting at the piano, playing my favorite music, and just enjoying playing my favorite tunes, essentially, right? However, this was when I started to actually compose my own original music. So this recording here is my first original piano composition after 500 hours of piano practice. Let's have a listen.
An original.
Sorry, there was some like technical difficulties there, but you could hear it mostly there in that second half, right? So yeah, that's about where I was after 500 hours of sitting at the piano, right? And yeah, I definitely have a lot more flowiness, smoothness on the piano. You know, I'm really starting to express myself more. Like, you can kind of feel a little bit more emotional control in that piece. So after 500 hours, you will start to develop more control over how you can actually express your emotions at the piano. You'll feel much more of a sense of freedom and flowingness when you're at the piano, right? A sense of flow between your hands and your fingers. As you can see, my forearms and hands are really starting to kind of play in this more smooth fashion, and that's what will happen when you spend more and more time at the piano. You will really start to bond the piano, right? And that's why I said it's more accurate to describe this as, 100 hours versus 1,000 hours of sitting at the piano, because a lot of learning the piano isn't just practice. You also have to bond the piano, start to really connect with the instrument, and, start to really be able to express yourself, improvise, start composing your own original music, producing your own original music, using the piano and the keyboard to, express yourself, right? These are all things that I cover in UtK Keyboard Pro. So if you're interested in a full system for actually unlocking the keyboard that's based off all of this journey that I went through, like, I looked back at my journey and I thought, along the way, as a beginner to intermediate pianist, what were the things that I wish I knew? I packaged it all up into a system, and it's on UtK Keyboard Pro, so you can check the link below if you want to speed run this progress. If you want to get to this level way quicker, definitely check that out. But however, I still look a little bit more physically constrained. I don't feel entirely comfortable, right? And so, yeah, that's about where I was after 500 hours of sitting at the piano, right? Now we cut to when I was about 19, okay? So this was recorded when I was 19, and it was at this age that I really started to take my piano practice seriously, right around the time that I recorded this. Now, I would put this video at about 1,000 hours of sitting at the piano. Now, a lot of the time from 500 hours to 1,000 hours was me actually composing original music, right? So I spent a lot of that time just expressing myself, exploring different textures, different ideas, different chords, and starting to really, improvise and just express different ideas and explore sounds on the piano. And that's where I spent a lot of that time. And I did actually start to do a little bit more practice, right? And when I say practice, I mean kind of working on the things that I wasn't good at, practicing scales, practicing finger exercises and things like this. I did a little bit more of that from age 16 to 19 to this recording here, okay? And so let's have a listen to where I was at after 1,000 hours of piano practice. Okay, so I'd say that's a really big step up, right? There's a lot more control. I'd say that's the big word here, is control. Control over my emotional expression, right? The emotions I'm trying to convey with the music that I'm playing, control over my dynamics and my articulation, right? I'm slowing things down a little bit. I'm bending the time. That's a term, that's something that we call rubato, when you're kind of bending the time, you're slowing it down here, you're speeding it up here for kind of emotional effect. My sense of articulation is more advanced, right? The notes, I'm playing the notes kind of softly here, a little bit more intense there. Like there was that left hand arpeggio that climbed up, built up, and then kind of came back down and went down in dynamics. That's dynamics and articulation. And that's actually how you start to really express yourself on the piano. Okay. You want to be practicing your dynamics and your articulation. And I mostly develop those skills through actually original composition and learning my favorite pieces of music. But again, I didn't spend a whole lot of time actually practicing the piano, okay? And so I think you can absolutely get to this level after 1,000 hours of piano practice and beyond if you do what I did and spend a lot of, like maybe half your time kind of leading with your love and passion for music, connecting with music, developing your more intuitive connection to the instrument, really start to be able to navigate your way across the instrument in this more intuitive way, be creative, have fun, right? Do that, but balance that with the technical side that I didn't practice, right? Actually spend time practicing your technical stuff, right? Your scales, your finger exercises, develop your arpeggios, right? As you can see here, I've got a lot more arpeggio, like my arpeggio is a lot more advanced compared to this previous one when it was more of a basic pattern, right? So you can actually drill those. You can practice arpeggios in isolation and develop that technique and then apply that to your original composition and things like that. And if you have this really structured and well thought out practice session, you could definitely get to the stage after 1,000 hours. Absolutely. So long as you're actually following a system and a map. Right? And so that's exactly why I created UtK Keyboard Pro again. Like it's a full system and I want to help you get to this stage way quicker than I did, right? And I want to help you actually be able to really express yourself and have that sense of freedom and dynamic control and creative expression on the piano, right? That's exactly why I created UtK Keyboard. So definitely check out UtK Keyboard Pro if you're interested in that. And yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think of this kind of content. I enjoyed making this. This was quite fun to look back at my, my different stages of the journey. Now again, it was around about here when I really started to take my piano practice seriously, right? Because on the wall you can see here is Bill Lawrence, we've got Corey Henry, Herbie Hancock, and Jacob Collier, right? These are piano maestros here, kind of like jazz piano maestros. And this was when I really started to get into jazz, right? And contemporary playing, and I really started to take my piano practice seriously. And so if you want to know what the next 1,000 hours of actual piano practice looks like, definitely let me know. I'll be happy to make that video because I think it would be really interesting. And yeah, that's it for this one. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.